Drought. It's almost a way of life for us Aussies, and yet, despite it being so common, it often still remains a challenge for us to feed horses during drought. As drought takes hold, pasture disappears, water dries up, and quality hay becomes scarce, expensive, and sometimes near impossible to find. Feeding horses and keeping them healthy during droughts can feel difficult. They always seem hungry, they often seem bored, and it can be hard to keep them healthy and in good condition. While unfortunately there is nothing I can teach you that will make droughts easy, let me guide you on the 3 most important things you should focus on when feeding your off the track during drought. And at least that way, you can feel some sense of certainty that you're doing the most important things for your horse. You essentially have 3 priorities when feeding during a drought. These are, in order of importance, meeting your horse's daily nutrient requirements, preventing nutrition-based disease, and keeping your horse mentally occupied and happy. Let's look at each of them in detail, starting with the number 1 priority. The biggest change to your horse's diet as you head into drought will be changes in forage quality and availability. If your horse is grazing, pasture will initially brown off, and in severe or prolonged droughts, pasture disappears altogether. If your off the track is normally kept on hay, you may find that the availability of your normal hay becomes scarce, and you'll be forced to use a lower grade or a different type of hay. In both scenarios, the end result is that energy intake is reduced in your off-the-tracks diet and will result in weight loss. So most of feeding during a drought comes down to managing your horse's diet around the forage that you're able to source and making sure that you're topping up your horse's energy intake to prevent weight loss. Sounds easy, but sometimes it's not. So let me give you some specific examples to help demonstrate what I mean. Early in droughts, you can usually still find good quality hay. Or if you're well prepared and have the storage space, you hopefully have a reserve of good quality hay stashed away for when there isn't any rainy days. So initially, as your pasture disappears, you would just need to substitute in good quality hay to replace your pasture. In prolonged droughts, there is often only low quality hay available. And sometimes beggars can't be choosers, so you just have to feed whatever quality of hay you can get. But low quality hay will be lower in energy and also protein than your pasture, or any better quality hay that you've been feeding to this point. So as you substitute in the low quality hay, your horse's daily energy intake will drop. To prevent excessive weight loss, and really this is what feeding well in a drought is about, you will need to bring in some other higher energy feeds to make up your horse's daily energy shortfall. Higher energy feeds that will help your horse hold weight include complete feeds, high energy fibres like lupin hulls, sugar beet pulp and copra meal, and grains like oats, extruded barley and Australian rice bran. I have put some specific diets that you might consider using during drought into the ebook that goes along with this video to give you a starting point for feeding when you hit your next drought. At this point, you may be wondering how you know when you need to add extra feed ingredients, or how you determine how much extra feed your horse needs. Thankfully, this bit is super easy. Go watch the Queensland Off the Track video on body condition scoring and use your horse's body condition as your guide to adjust the amount of feed you are providing. Hay of any kind almost feels like a luxury in some droughts, but when possible, always try to find multiple different types of hay for your off the track to try and maintain some level of forage variety in the diet. The forage variety will give both nutrient and fibre variety, which gives your horse a wealth of health benefits. For a lot more detail on buying hay and hay quality, you can watch the Queensland Off the Track video on buying hay. Working out a hay budget is super useful during a drought. So you either know how much hay you need to buy or how much hay you can feed based on the hay you have available. In an ideal situation, a 500 kilogram off the track should be fed 10 to 15 kilograms of hay per day. This is 70 to 105 kilograms, or in small bales, around 3 to 4.5 bales per week. Per month, it's 300 to 450 kilograms, which is 12 to 18 bales. It's a lot of hay, but on the bright side, think of all the weight training you'll be doing lugging all of that hay. If you're feeding hay free choice, be mindful of wastage. Round bales fed on the ground can have wastage as high as 50%, which, when hay is scarce and expensive, is something you definitely want to avoid. Free choice hay is a wonderful thing for your off the tracks. But find ways to feed it safely that will minimise wastage. Big bale hay nets or hay feeders or both are super effective for reducing hay wastage, and the nets have the added benefit of slowing hay intake down. What happens if you can't find enough hay? Good question, and even I struggle with what to do in these situations. If you can't find enough hay to feed the amounts we just discussed, you can substitute in other feed ingredients as partial hay replacers. Feed ingredients that can be used as partial hay replacement include hay cubes, chaff, lupin or soybean hulls, sugar beet pulp, copra meal, straw, oat hulls, sunflower seed hulls, or safe and palatable browse. Things like edible trees and shrubs. It is really important that you still feed some hay, even if it is just straw, because the chewing required to eat it and the saliva production it generates are all so important for your off the tracks physical and mental health. 5 kilograms of hay per day for a 500 kilogram off the track is the absolute only when you're desperate minimum amount of hay you should feed your off the track per day. This is 35 kilograms or around 1.5 bales of hay per week, and 150 kilograms or 6 bales of hay per month. If you are feeding these tiny amounts of hay, you must make sure you are using other ingredients to provide additional fibre and a lot more energy, or your off the track will lose significant amounts of weight and be at high risk of disease. Again, there are diets in the ebook to help keep your off the track as healthy and as happy as possible in these severe drought situations where hay is difficult to find. There are 3 more things I want you to keep in mind when it comes to nutrition in a drought. Always feed a balanced diet. Use high quality balancer pellets or complete feeds at the correct feeding rate, together with your hay, to meet protein, vitamin and mineral requirements. Always make sure there is salt and clean fresh water available, and be extra conscious of vitamin E. It is the vitamin your off the track will struggle the most to get enough of during drought. If you want to make sure your off the track is getting enough vitamin E, put a 1000 IU human vitamin E capsule into their daily feed. Your next priority when feeding during drought is to prevent diseases that can occur due to drought. Outside of nutrient deficiencies, the main concerns from a nutritionist perspective during drought are gastric ulcers, sand colic and colic in general. Let's look at each of these briefly. Squamous gastric ulcers are the ulcers that occur in the top part of the stomach. The main factor that causes these ulcers is acid splashing from the bottom of the stomach up to the top part of the stomach, where the acid then literally burns holes through the lining of the stomach. This acid splash is able to happen any time your horse's stomach becomes empty, During drought, with horses that are relying on hay for their forage, they can and often will eat their daily hay allocation quite quickly, meaning they spend long periods of every day not eating, which means their stomach will often be empty and at high risk of gastric ulceration. To prevent this ulceration, feed lots of hay when you can, so you keep their stomachs full and the acid can't splash. As a general rule, you should avoid your off-the-track going any longer than 4 hours without hay. Small whole hay nets, hay bags and hay balls are all excellent options for extending the amount of time it takes you off the track to eat their hay. As grazing animals, horses normally eat a lot of dirt. And normally this isn't an issue because all the fibre going through their gut just picks up the dirt and moves it out of their gut. But during drought, the likely situation is that more dirt will go in and less will come out, which means it can accumulate and cause irritation to the gut wall, which can frequently lead to diarrhoea and sometimes lead to colic. I find in the early stages of sand or dirt accumulation in the gut, horses just become irritable and grumpy. I assume because they are in pain. So keep an eye on your horse for changes in behaviour, as they may be an early sign of trouble brewing in the gut. How do you avoid this? Well, first things first, try to limit the amount of soil your horse is eating by feeding hay off surfaces like rubber matting. Then, feed as much hay as your hay supply allows. The more hay you can move through your off-the-track's gut, the less chance they have of sand or dirt accumulating in there. Finally, use psyllium husk or specialised supplements to help shift any small amounts of sand or dirt that has accumulated in there. The specifics on how to do this are in the ebook. If your horse does have sand colic due to sand or dirt in the gut, you should work with your veterinarian, who can use a combination of psyllium and magnesium sulfate to remove the sand or dirt from your horse's gut. Changing hay, poor quality hay, drinking from dams with poor water quality, and high intakes of grain-based hard feed are 4 known risk factors for colic. And during drought, these risk factors can all be present. Here are some tips to reduce the risk of colic during drought. Introduce new hay into the diet as slowly as possible. Buy the best quality hay you can find and avoid mouldy hays. Provide an alternative source of clean water if your off-the-track's water source is a mucky dam. And don't feed too much grain. While droughts often force our hand with what we need to feed to minimise the risk of colic, don't exceed 5 kilograms of grain per day for a 500 kilogram off the track. And, with the exception of oats, never feed raw grains. Your third and final priority when feeding during drought is to keep your horse as mentally occupied with eating and therefore as happy as you can. Here are 3 very quick tips to help you achieve this. Feed hay at ground level. The head down grazing position is the most natural and calming position for a horse to be in. Plus, it is essential for lung health, so when you can, always feed at ground level. Keep your off-the-track eating. Horses are happy when they're chewing, so have your off-the-track eating for as much time as possible. Having hay available 24/7 is ideal. But if you can't provide free choice hay, then small whole hay nets, hay bags and hay balls will help you limit hay intake but extend the amount of time it takes your horse to eat it. Give your horse opportunity to forage. Recreating some form of foraging behaviour for you off the track alleviates boredom and promotes natural activity. Try putting a hay bag in one position in their paddock or yard, a hay net in another position, a hay ball somewhere else, and scatter or hide hay cubes around and put them all away from their water. If you have multiple horses in the same paddock, it is really important that you take care to make sure that they can all safely feed from hay feeders, to avoid the horse or horses who are lower in the pecking order from missing out. To quickly recap, during drought, remember to make sure your diets are balanced and your horse's daily nutrient needs are met, as you substitute in varying quality hay to the diet. When hay quality is low, be sure to top up energy intakes with higher energy ingredients to prevent excessive weight loss. Feed plenty of hay and feed it out of slow feeders to reduce your horse's risk of gastric ulcers. Feed hay off a clean surface, feed as much hay as you can, and use psyllium when needed to reduce your off-the-track's risk of sand colic. Change from one batch of hay to another slowly. Make sure your off-the-track always has access to clean water, and limit grain intake to reduce the risk of colic. And finally, feed at ground level and get creative with the way that you feed. Using hay slow feeders in different places and scattered hay cubes to keep your horse chewing for long periods and to recreate a little bit of foraging behaviour to keep your off-the-track mentally happier and healthier. Droughts are no fun, but focusing on meeting your horse's nutrient needs, preventing disease and keeping your horse mentally occupied means your off-the-track will come through the next drought in excellent physical and mental health.